Welcome back for the AFEX commodities update. Now, the week-on-week summary of activities on AFEX exchange shows mixed sentiments. While the volume traded for the week ended 3rd of January 2022 dropped, the number of deals was up. We have Femi Kende, our analyst, structuring and origination of AFEX, has more on this. Great to have you, Femi.
Hi, great laddie. Happy New Year. Happy holidays.
Happy New Year. Yeah. How did the market perform?
Right, so there was actually a drop in the level of activities on the exchange this week in terms of the turnover and the volume traded. For the turnover, we actually saw a 84% drop week on week. However, for the volume traded, we actually saw a 82% drop week on week. But the number of deals executed on the exchange actually increased by 18% for the reporting week. For the financial benchmark, that is our AFEX Commodities Index and the AFEX Export Index, actually saw opposite performance for the reporting week. For the AFEX Commodity Index, it actually increased by 2.71% to close the reporting week at 460 basis points. However, the AFEX Export Index actually returned the previously reported week value, remaining unchanged for the close for this reported week. In terms of the volume traded across all commodities, we actually saw the trade of maize, sorghum, soybean, paddy rice, and cocoa on the exchange. However, maize accounted for a significant bulk of the trade for the reporting week. For commodities prices, maize actually closed the week at 219 naira per contract, increasing by 3.76% week on week. Paddy rice actually increased by 9.19% week on week to close the reporting week at 203 naira per contract. Sorghum actually closed the reporting week at 270 naira per contract, increasing by 10% week on week, while cocoa experienced a marginal increase, increasing by 0.51% to close the week at 1,155 naira per contract. For soybean, we actually saw a decline of about 0.35% week on week to close the reporting week at 394 naira per contract. For cashew, we actually saw a decline of 6.23% week on week to close the reporting week at 454 naira per contract. For more information about our reports or reports spanning the commodities market, you could actually check our website at www.afexnigeria.com, or you could follow us at our social media at afexnigeria.com or COMEX by AFEX.
All right, thanks for that update, Femi. How did the FETC perform last year, and what drove performance?
Right, so a bit of a background of the FETC. So AFEX since inception has actually had the goal, we've had the goal of creating shared prosperity while actually helping Africa feed itself. Now, if you look at the flow of funds into the agricultural space, you know that it's very negligible compared to other sectors. So we've been tasked with creating innovative ways to actually encourage capital market players to invest in the commodity space, and not just not just any type of capital market players. We think about the institutional investors, and we also think about the retail investors. Now, the FETC is actually an exchange traded fund in such a way that it's cheaper, and it's an easier way to actually penetrate into the commodity space. So last year, we designed the product and we listed it on the exchange. Interestingly, the product actually closed the year at 68% return, showing that the underlining to which the commodity index, or rather the exchange traded commodity tracked, actually performed very well. You think about the underlining like maize, soybean, paddy rice, and these commodities actually had a splendid performance within the period or within the tenure of the FETC.
All right, not a bad performance, but with the end of petroleum subsidy drawing closer, how will this policy affect commodity prices?
Right, so great one. First off, we need to think about the importance of transportation as relating to commodities, right? Over the years, we've observed that smallholder farmers account for a significant bulk of the commodities or the crops produced in the country. And over the years, we've also observed, after dealing with these farmers for over 7, 8 years, we've noticed that farmers actually reside or cultivate out of the proximity of economic hotspots. So as a result of this, there is always a need for logistic providers to actually move these commodities from the farm gate or from the farm to the markets where they are needed. As a result of this, we also know that if there's going to be an increase in the cost of petroleum, it naturally translates to an increase in the cost of transportation, which will ultimately directly translate to an increase in the cost of commodities that people would be buying this year. So with this in mind, we know that, or we expect a continuous pressure of prices upwards as a result of the end of the petroleum subsidy.
All right, we'll keep tracking that. Thank you so much, Femi Kainde, analyst, structuring and origination at AFEX. All right, now to our next conversation, still on AFEX. The three most significant influences on the food and agriculture industries in contemporary history can be easily identified as technology, climate change, and the coronavirus pandemic. Over the last 2 years, farmers and food producers have faced unprecedented weather-related disasters, persistent labor shortages, and shifting customer expectations. Let's get predictions from AFEX now for the year and suggestions of some resources expected to play key roles in the industry's recovery. Let's talk to Yusuf Ogumbi, now head structuring and origination at AFEX. Great to have you on the program.
Nice to be here again, Ladi. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the pandemic's ripple effect didn't spare, the food system. You see, globally, food costs have risen to their highest since 2011. Will high food costs persist in 2022?
Yeah, quite likely. Some of the expectations we've seen are saying that food prices will continue to increase in 2022, albeit with a limited volatility, not as high as what we saw in 2021. Some of the factors that drove food prices to their ultimate highs in 2021 were some of the supply chain challenges we saw as a result of COVID-19. We also saw energy prices going up in 2021. Also, we saw the effect of climate change across the world. We saw heat waves across North America. We saw some flooding as well. And this affected commodity prices generally. But going into 2022, we are seeing a bit of mixed reactions, so mixed expectations, if you would say. So for commodities like wheat, sugar, we continue to see that pressure going into 2022, and prices will continue to rally strongly. And this is also because governments are now imposing export restrictions. Governments like Russia, Kazakhstan are imposing export restrictions on wheat, for instance. But for other commodities like maize, soybeans, we wouldn't see as much rally as we saw in 2021 because some of the production that we are seeing coming online in February, as expected for Brazil, for instance, is looking like it to be a little bit better than what we saw last year. So mixed expectations, but the underlying fact remains that prices will continue to go up.
Right, quite mixed expectations there. But, climate change and its impact on the food system once again took center stage in 2021. You see increasing temperatures and sea levels, changing precipitation patterns, and, more extreme weather, threatening the food system. We've seen big food companies, betting on regenerative agriculture to thwart climate change. Do you think this is the way to go?
Yeah, regenerative agriculture is one of the options we have. It's even important because it increases the potential of soils to produce for us generally. So we expect that regenerative agriculture will be a key element as we move forward. We also see instances of vertical farming, greenhouse farming being adopted across the world. And I think personally that this is important as we go into 2050, where the world will reach about 9 billion people. We have 2 billion extra mouths to feed. So that means that we need to adopt every option that is possible. We've seen firms come up, startups come up, trying to adopt the potential of vertical farming. And I think all of these options are on the table. Regenerative agriculture, yes, because we still have a lot of arable land, and we can leverage on these sustainable practices to increase the potential of this land and reduce the impact of climate change. But then it's one of the options. Other options continue to remain vertical farming, greenhouse farming, and the likes.
All right, and according to the World Bank, food production growth in Sub-Saharan Africa region is, forecast to rise, but, it depends on policies adopted by countries and international community. What are the important policies that can help the agri space right now?
So as we see it, some of the challenges, so we look at the challenges and then we see some of the policies that might be very important moving forward. Some of the challenges we are seeing, the first one is climate change, and it's probably the most important as we have it now. So the policy response to that will range from support to R&D in order to develop some other varieties that can combat these climate change problems. We also need to think differently about how the agriculture uses water. Water is increasingly becoming a scarce commodity, and then policy responses need to look at that. We need to start looking at opportunities to conserve water more. We need to start looking at programs that can help us utilize every liter of water we bring into the agriculture space. And not forgetting the fact that we also need to look at policies that will help drive financing into this space. So just because we have these challenges coming up, you also expect that the risks will begin to build up. So we also need policies that will help to support financing to come into this space and support the farmers that are, that are participating in the agriculture sector generally. So we need policies to back R&D to combat climate change. We need policies to direct the most needed resources into this space. And we also need policies to direct financing, notwithstanding the increasing risks we continue to see in this space.
Well, quite interesting times. But, talking about, youth participation, how can we, increase youth participation in the agri space?
Yeah, it's important we increase youth participation in the agricultural sector generally. And we need to understand two things. First, youth participation has been touted from the perspective of employment generation for youth, the burgeoning youth population. But then we also need to recognize that if we don't get youth into this space, we run the risk of facing severe food security problems moving forward. Imagine when you have the average age of farmers around, say, 45, 48, in some cases higher than that, and you have these people aging, right? It reduces their capability to farm as much as they used to, notwithstanding the kind of support they get, so whether they use tractors or whatever. So we need to bring in these youths into this space, and some of these youths typically have a different mindset from what our fathers had. So you look at our fathers and mothers had. So you look at instances where we have a larger size of farmland. So an average youth is probably looking at a 10-hectare farm to convince him to sit down on the farm and plant. An average youth is looking at stronger market support, market access. An average youth is looking at stronger access to finance in order to participate in this space. And we also need to remember that youths are faced with a plethora of opportunities around now. And it's a case of which one gives me the highest return to participate in. So if we were faced with a tech opportunity, I were faced with being a finance analyst, or I'm faced with being a farmer, which one gives me the highest return? And appears that the odds are skewed against farming as of today. So we need to think differently about how we bring these youths into this space. Whether we look at programs to enlighten them, programs to skill them, but we also need to look at the way this system is structured and try to bring in other incentives that will bring these youths into this sector. It's important we get them in, I must say.
Also, and with a lot of youths focusing on the music industry too. All right, Yusuf Ogubi, thank you so much for coming on the program. Yusuf Ogubi is head structuring and origination at AFEX. We'll take a moment now.